It seems like every day OpenAI is in the news, Microsoft is in the news, Google is in the news, Facebook/Meta is in the news, but where the heck is Apple? Shouldn't they be in the news as well? And what's the consequence if they aren't? Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I first want to start this episode out by saying I have been for a very long time, since 1984. In fact, previous to that, I have owned an Apple product since 1984 continuously, even have an Apple shirt that I got when I was in Cupertino last fall. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of Apple, but I am really, really worried about Apple these days. They seem to be headed towards irrelevance if they don't do something fast. So I'm going to talk about what's going on right now, what Apple might be working on, and what, in my humble opinion, they could do to fix these problems and help themselves catch up and maybe even get into a leadership position again. So first of all, a few projects that we know that Apple has been working on, kind of skunkworks kind of stuff, but they're in limbo. They're not really announced at this point. The most obvious, of course, being they are self-driving. I think they used to call it Project Titan, but who knows what's happened to that. So they were working on an actual car at one point, and then it became a software stack. Some sort of thing that's like Apple CarPlay, but the whole idea was it was going to do autonomous driving and everything as well. So there is something of that either they're still working on or we're working on and stopped working on, who knows. They also ostensibly are working on AR/VR/XR glasses, something along the lines of this kind of thing that will be hopefully better than the Google glasses that came out gosh, was that a decade ago now? I don't know. Anyway, maybe the mid 2000 teens or something. But anyway, the idea of that would be that it would allow you to exist in a multimodal world. So you could be walking down the street, but also Zoom calling with somebody and overlaying data and interesting things about where you're walking, or I don't know, reading your emails, who knows what it is. So I don't know that I'm a super big fan of that. I mean, Meta has also been very interested in that as well, but that is another project that certainly they have been purported to be working on. And then the last big project they've been rumored to be working on is a major upgrade to Siri. So, so a much, much better voice assistant. At this point, Siri feels very, very old school, right? There have been so many advances in large language models and the capabilities of AI to be a personal assistant that Siri feels, almost useless at this point. So there are other options that are much better. So that's another rumored project that they are working on right now. But again, all of this stuff is just rumors, which is one of the problems that Apple has. And speaking of that, let's make this their first problem, which is culture. Apple is an incredibly secretive company. They have been since their inception with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. They've always worked in complete secrecy until they're ready to roll out a product, and then they ship the product and they make a big splash and they're like, haha, look what we've got. That is potentially a big problem at this point because they are losing some cultural capital, perhaps. The buzz that is around the things that are going on right now, you kind of want to be in that every day. You don't want to just disappear and have people not paying attention to you, because otherwise they'll put out a YouTube video saying, hey, what the heck is going on with Apple? So of course, with the landscape of artificial intelligence, and in particular large language models and generative art, etc., changing almost daily, Apple's culture of secrecy and getting everything polished and doing kind of a once yearly sort of demo or introduction or something, that really doesn't work very well in the current climate. Apple's second problem, as I see it, and really what could potentially be their Achilles heel, is their focus on user data privacy. And as a user, I definitely appreciate that they focus on my privacy, but right now, pretty much every other company in the world is just like, screw everybody's privacy. We're going to suck on all the data that we can get, and we are going to utilize all of that to make these products better and better. So Apple's focus on user privacy and not using user data removes a massive data moat that they could have. And remember, data moats are the big thing that differentiates all of these products in terms of large language model and generative art software. Large and proprietary data sets are what could set off these companies and allow them to do things that are unique in the industry. I talked about that recently in a video you can find up here about how Twitter could have access to a large data moat if they are indeed working on a large language model that it sounds like they are working on. Anyway, that they'll have this data that is the Twitter kind of archives available to them that other people don't have, or at least don't have in totality. So that's the kind of thing that can differentiate them. And if you think about how much data Apple could have access to, that data moat that they could have could be massive. And if they're not utilizing that to the fullest extent, that could be a really big ding on Apple. Again, I'm a little bit ambivalent about this. As a consumer, I really appreciate that they're focused on data privacy. But as an investor in Apple and as a person who is a fan of Apple, I'm also like, you guys need to really consider how you're going to be able to utilize the data that you have in a way that you consider to be ethical to give yourself an advantage in the weeks and months and years to come. Next up is focus. Apple is, they consider themselves very much a hardware company, although I consider them almost more a software company first. But anyway, they're very focused on the hardware and software stack kind of thing. They're not really prioritizing artificial intelligence and large language model research. In other words, it's not their core competitive advantage at this point, at least as far as I understand it from Apple's point of view, right? I kind of disagree about that, but at the very least, you can see companies like Google, Meta, OpenAI, etc. Their core advantage is their software. They have to rely on their software. They're not developing hardware at all. So it's software that differentiates them, and in particular right now, AI, large language models, generative art models, etc. So the result of this is that Apple might not see the urgency of investing heavily in AI, large language models, and so on. This could be a huge mistake though, because software has always been what has differentiated Apple's hardware from other people's hardware. They have an incredibly tight hardware-software integration, and that's always what's helped differentiate Apple's products and, made us pay more money for them. It doesn't take a genius to realize you pay more for an iPhone, more for a MacBook, whatever, than a competing product with similar specs. And what you're doing is you're paying for that hardware-software integration. So Apple not focusing enough on AI, which is where the new software hotness is happening, is a really potentially huge problem. With what Andre Karpathy calls Software 2.0 coming, which is basically AI-based software, Apple could lose that hardware-software integration advantage, and very, very rapidly. So overall, Apple has got secretive projects that they're working on that are kind of years in development time. They focus a lot on data privacy. They have a very, very private culture. And at least as far as I understand it, they're really not concerned about AI and machine learning as a core element of their business. So it hasn't been a focus. But all of their projects and their awesome hardware are going to come to naught if they get too far behind in this race. It's one thing to compete against like one company, but against the entire world, including tiny little startups like Midjourney, AutoGPT, Stable Boost, etc., etc., etc. All these things are run by tiny groups of people, and they're sprouting up like weeds in a garden. With that kind of pace of innovation that's happening on almost a daily basis, the kind of slow plotting methodology that has worked so well for Apple for decades is really not going to work in the coming years. One thing that's really fascinating is that Apple's hardware has really set them up for success in this. They have neural engines in the Mac Studio that I'm recording on, and they have it on their iPhones, they have it on their MacBooks, etc. They have this amazing stuff on their Apple Silicon that is actually there. They just haven't made use of it. Hell, people have quantized things like Llama and stuff, and they've gotten them working on basic MacBooks. So if Apple really threw their engineering talent and their hardware and software talent and integrated that kind of a thing, their hardware could absolutely crush it on the AI front. They could have amazing abilities if they just focused on making it better and easier for us users to use, or developing products that would make it easier for us to use. What Apple really needs right now is the software talent, the vision, and the drive to make really good use of the hardware that they already have. And remember, if they don't improve their software radically and move it to Software 2.0, they could become merely a hardware company, and that's a commodity that other people can chip away at over the years. So what can Apple do to help themselves out? The number one thing is to go faster. For example, are they going to wait for WWDC at the beginning of June to make a bunch of big announcements? I say that that's too late. They can't wait that long. That's like 7 weeks away. That's infinite time right now. They need to be making announcements on a weekly basis of things that they're working on and new things. They don't need to package it up in these like really ridiculous, slick announcements that they do where they spend like 90 minutes or 2 hours and you get 5 to 10 minutes worth of useful content. They just need to do raw, unfiltered press releases and just have people talk about these things in an unscripted fashion and let them be passionate about it. So they need to drive faster, and they also need to take us along with them. They need to become more transparent. The problem right now is that Apple is a gigantic ship and they need to become a speedboat. They want to do things like, turn really, really slowly and make these huge amounts of progress over very long amounts of time. They need to be thinking like a speedboat. They need to become more agile again. They need to be able to make turns rapidly and radically, and then they need to, be transparent and take us along for the ride. As a suggestion, I would say that what they need to do is spin off a semi-autonomous AI team of just maybe like 30 to 50 people. Just, it doesn't matter how much it costs. Just pay them whatever. Apple's got tons and tons of money. Pay them any amount of money to steal them away from whoever you need to steal them away from, or take them from college, take the best and brightest talent, compete for these people, pay them whatever they want, and give them their own, space. Even I would say physically, put them in their own space, let them work on their own, and let them come up with products, and then move those to market as quickly as possible. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Speed, speed, speed. And a second point that I was already alluding to is collaboration and more openness, right? You need to generate more buzz. You need to publish more papers. You need to be part of the community, including open source software, things like that. You need to create that sort of positive buzz around yourself amongst the AI development community, but also the community at large. You need to let the public know what you're doing as well. Number 3 is focus on AI. Like I was saying before, hire a whole team of the best people you can possibly get your hands on. Not a giant team. Don't do Volkswagen's mistake and hire 5,000 people. Hire 30 to 50 people who are incredibly talented and let them go. You need to have that focus on AI because that is clearly the future. Yeah, we're going to need hardware to run this stuff on. Apple is really good at making hardware. Keep engineering that kind of stuff and iterating on that as well as you can, but you need to allow a software team to really, really make use of this hardware. Next up, and again, I hate to say this as a consumer, but you need to leverage the data that you have. Apple is losing out hugely on not leveraging all of the data they have because they're protecting the consumer. So, again, as a consumer, I really appreciate their focus on privacy, but they're going to become irrelevant if they don't utilize that data to create unique products that other companies can't because they have access to this data. This is such an existential thing in my mind that I feel like they either have a choice of continuing with their data privacy rules, as far as I understand them, and becoming irrelevant and not making a difference to the world anymore. And I guess that's one fine option if they don't care about maintaining their superior status, or they're going to have to loosen those purse strings about data privacy in order to maintain and hopefully grow over time. Next, they need to really focus on AI-driven products. This could be AI updated versions of what they are already doing, things like Siri, more personalized recommendations from Apple Music and Apple TV, etc. I think that is okay, but that's not nearly as exciting as turning loose some people to really be visionary about this. What they really need is something that we don't even know about yet, that we don't know we want yet. That's the kind of thing that we expect out of Apple, is for them to pop up with a product and say, like, you didn't even know you needed this, but now you're not going to be able to live without it. That's the kind of thing that will take them fully into this software 2.0 world. As Wayne Gretzky famously said, they need to skate to where the puck is going, not where it is right now. And speaking of that, my final point is that they need a new CEO. Tim Cook has been a really, really good peacetime CEO, right? He's the kind of president of the country that just is really good at maintaining things while there's peace. But then when war happens, and this is war, this is an existential threat to Apple, you need a new type of CEO. You need like a wartime CEO. So they need somebody like a Steve Jobs. And the reason why I was connecting this, of course, was that Steve Jobs was the one who took that quote from Wayne Gretzky and applied it to Apple. He said, we need to produce products the consumer doesn't even know that they need at this point. We need to produce those products for where things are going in the future, not where they are right now. So obviously, Steve Jobs unfortunately passed away over a decade ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. I think I'm his age now. I think I'm about the age that Steve Jobs was when he passed away, which is really, really terrifying. Anyway, they need somebody like that. They need a visionary. They need someone like Microsoft found with Satya Nadella. They need to find somebody who has a vision and a desire and a will to make them move forward at a radically faster and different pace than they have for the past decade. Again, I've been a fan of Tim Cook. I think he does amazing at logistics, but that's his kind of thing. He's just good at day-to-day operations. He needs to move onto the board. He needs to voluntarily step down, and not Tim Cook, but the board themselves needs to hire somebody else. They need to figure out who that vision person is and put them in charge, and they need to do it yesterday. That's the kind of thing that should have happened at least a year or two ago. They should have seen this coming, and this is on the board for not making it happen. I sort of feel like Apple has gotten stuck in that innovator's dilemma. They've just become really, really large and successful at what they do. They're the biggest company in the world, and they don't really want to rock the boat. But not rocking the boat is exactly the kind of thing that's going to doom them to irrelevance. So again, I'm doing this video out of love. love. I really want Apple to succeed. I have been a huge fan. Like I said, I have personally owned their hardware and software for almost 4 decades now, since 1984. So please, please, please do think about what's going on and make changes and make them as fast as possible so that you can become agile and move into the future quickly. If Apple lets their products come out in a more hodgepodge, raw, rough fashion than a single polished, beautiful looking, but kind of empty WWDC keynote presentation, that'll be the first evidence that I'll see that they're really, really starting to think about things differently. So think different, Apple, think different. All right, I hope you enjoyed this rather passionate episode and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon and my YouTube channel members. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly do appreciate it. And if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.